In this video, I'm going to show you how to decorate this adorable cake slice cartoon cake. Hi, it's Karolyn. If you want to learn how to bake and decorate amazing cakes, then I would love for you to join me by hitting subscribe and the bell. Real quick, if you just want to skip the intro and get right into the video, there are chapters linked below. So like I said in the beginning, I am showing you how to decorate this little cake slice cartoon themed cake. And I'm starting with my cake already baked and filled, and it is wrapped in plastic and settling before I start to ice it and decorate it. I have videos showing you how I bake cakes, how I fill them, and all of that is going to be linked below, along with any of the tools that I use or other videos that I reference in this video. That will all be linked in the description as well. So let's get started. Alright guys, I'm starting with my cake already baked and filled. It was wrapped in plastic and just sitting at room temperature, settling. I'm putting a crumb coat on here first. So I'm getting a thinner coat of icing. This is American Buttercream icing, making sure it goes over the top of the cake. Use my bench scraper to smooth out the sides, and then pressing back the excess with my spatula, and set that in the fridge for about 3 to 4 hours so the icing can solidify. And now I'm doing a thicker layer of American buttercream. I have a tutorial showing you in full detail how I ice smooth buttercream cakes, and I will link that in the description. So now I'm using a Viva paper towel to smooth this out. You can only do this method on cakes that have a crusting buttercream on it. So I'm using my fondant smoother to press that paper towel against the side of the cake to really smooth it out. And I'm holding my spatula level so I can get an even sharp edge around the top and removing the excess icing. And now I'm just refining this cake. So I'm pressing it back down with the paper towel and the fondant smoother, and once again just refining that top edge. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect. This is getting covered with fondant, so it doesn't have to be perfect. And I'm just smoothing the top out with some hot water, and that looks good. Let's put that back in the fridge. Now I'll take it back out of the fridge. I want to cut the slice out. So this cake is cold. I'm not going to mess it up. I'm cutting a little triangle shape. Get a spatula underneath to lift it up. And all these tools that I use is going to be linked in the description as well. So I'm just removing this excess cake off the board. And I just want to get some icing on the inside of that cake so I can cover that up. So now I want to smooth out this icing. It gets a little tricky. So what you don't see me doing is dipping my spatula under hot water. So I'm using that hot blade and a little bit of the water to smooth out this icing. And that looks good. Put that back in the fridge. And now let's do the same thing for this little slice of cake. So I'm just covering the exposed cake with some icing, dipping my spatula in hot water, and just smoothing this out. And again, this doesn't have to be perfect because it is going to be covered in fondant. But you do want to get the icing as smooth as you can underneath. And that looks good. Let's put it back in the fridge. Now, what am I doing now? I am making some light yellow fondant. So I have Tylo's powder mixed in all of my fondant, and I will link that below. It just makes it easier to work with. So I'm doing a really light golden color for the cake part. So I'm rolling this out about 1/8 of an inch thick, making sure it's tall enough and wide enough. And I'm just cleaning the excess icing off the cake board. And I'm using a little bit of piping gel on the inside where I'm going to stick this piece of fondant. And now I'm just going to smooth it out. So get my fondant smoother, and I'm going to also smooth it with another piece of fondant. And I'm going to cut the excess off. So this is a sharp X-Acto knife so I can get some clean cuts, and using the cake as a guide. Again, this cake is cold, so I'm not going to mess it up as I work with it. And here I am using the excess piece of fondant to smooth out the fondant. I just find it's easier to smooth fondant with fondant. Get my tools to define that inner corner. That looks good. Let's put it back in the fridge. And now I'm going to color this teal. She wanted teal on the outside, so I am rolling it out, making sure that it's as long and as wide as I need. Smooth it with a fondant smoother, and then I want to measure how tall this needs to be, and then I'm going to cut a dotted line. And now I'm getting some Crisco. This is shortening I'm using on the outside of this cake. Shortening is more forgiving, so I'm going to be able to get this fondant in place once it's on the cake. So I'm going to roll it up from one end to the other, stick it down, and then unroll it around the cake. And because I have shortening on here, I can use my fingers and slide the fondant up to the top so I can get this in the right position. Now I'm using my fondant smoother to smooth it out and press it against the cake, cutting any excess off. And pressing my thumb down. You see how I'm trying to make sure it's level with the top of the cake, and then I use my X-Acto knife to cut off the excess. And you can also use scissors if you want to use scissors to remove the excess. So basically I'm just trying to make sure that this is even and flush with the cake. And now I'm getting a little bit of piping gel down on the ends because piping gel holds a little better. And that looks good. Let's put that back in the fridge. Now I am making the white icing drips that go on the top. So I want to roll this out pretty large. I'm putting this on an 8-inch cake. And I want to smooth that with a fondant smoother first. So I'm going to get a pan that's 3 inches larger than the cake it's going on. This is an 11-inch pan. Turn it upside down. Get a little mark. Putting an 8-inch board on the inside so I can make sure that I don't cut this up too high. Take my small cutting wheel and I'm just cutting little wavy icing drips the entire way around. And like always, anytime I cut anything out of fondant, I smooth my cuts with my fingers. And let's lay this on top. I took that back out of the fridge, so this cake is cold. I'm not going to mess it up. Do I need to keep saying that? Cut off the excess. And now I'm getting a little bit of water underneath and pressing that down. Now, you want to make sure that this doesn't wrinkle. So when I press that down, you see how it's a little wrinkled in that top part? So I'm kind of sliding it down, making sure that it doesn't form a wrinkle. I did just post a video showing you how I do this, and I actually used piping gel. You could use water, you can use piping gel, whatever you want, but I just always go back and forth depending on my mood. Just making sure that it doesn't wrinkle as you put it down. And smoothing it out with my fondant smoother and trimming off the excess. And once that is all cut, then I use my fingers just to smooth it out, and that looks good. Let's put that back in the fridge. Now I'm taking the cake slice out of the fridge, remove it and get rid of that excess icing, put it upside down, and I'm cutting this cardboard circle to fit. That was a little too big. That looks good. Now I have some melted chocolate and get it on there, flip it upside down and stick it to the bottom of the cake. Now, do you see how that's slanting forward a little bit? So I'm going to need to lift that up when I get it on the cake. So I have my ruler here. Everything is going to be linked below that I use, and I'm going to stack this cake. I have a stacking tutorial going to show you in detail how I stack cakes. It'll be linked below. But I used a little bit of buttercream underneath, and I lifted up that point, so now it's sitting level. And let's put that back in the fridge. Now I want to roll out the fondant for that slice on top. So I want to make sure I roll it out as tall and as wide as I need it to be. So I measured the slice, measured the fondant, and I am making sure everything is the correct size. Now let's get the cake out of the fridge, and I'm using a little bit of piping gel this time to stick the fondant on, and I wanted to stack the cake first so when I wrap this fondant around, it covers that void in the bottom. Do you see what I mean? So I didn't want to do the slice and then put the slice on top of the cake. It's just easier to do it this way. It just looks so much better. I'm using some fondant to smooth out the fondant, and then my X-Acto knife to cut off the excess. And then I want to do the same thing for this outside piece. So do you see how I'm holding it up against the side of the cake and then cutting off the excess just to try to get it to the best size that I can before I stick it to the cake? Good. Get some piping gel down. And again, I'm going to stick this to the cake. Smooth it out. And then take my X-Acto knife and cut the excess off. And let's stick that back in the fridge. Now I'm going to roll out that little icing drips for the top. So I'm getting the white icing, rolling it out, get my cake back out of the fridge, and I'm just putting it on top. Do you see how I'm trying to make sure that it's the correct size? So I'm making those marks, take it off, cut off the excess, put it back on, and now magically it fits. So I'm going to stick this to the top, get a little bit of piping gel underneath, and stick that down. Good, and now I want to make the little icing drips. So I have an X-Acto knife and I'm just carefully cutting little waves up and down. And using my finger to smooth out any cuts, like always, get some water underneath and pushing those little drips down. And put that back in the fridge. Now I'm rolling out the little icing filling strips, if you will. She wanted these colors, so I'm rolling them out really long, taking my small cutting wheel and just cutting wavy lines back and forth. And I'm doing 2 or 3 strips in each color. Get my cake back out of the fridge. Now I'm getting some water behind each strip and sticking it down on one side, wrapping it around the cake, and stopping on the other side where it meets. Use my X-Acto knife to cut. I'm doing the same thing on the bottom. It's a little more tricky when I have to go to that inner corner. Good, now I'm making the little icing swirl, so I'm rolling out the blue icing and swirl it around. And I think I did this 4 times. So I get those in the right position, and then I get a little water underneath and stick it down to the cake. Now I'm making the cherries, so I have some hot pink icing, and I'm going to roll it into a ball, then use my ball tool and make that little indent in the top, smooth it out with my fingers, and get a little water down and stick that down. Do that for all 4. Now I have this clay gun. I love this tool, but it's a pain in the butt. So I'm using the tiniest circle blade that comes with it, disc that comes with it. Get some shortening on my finger and lube up the inside. Now your fondant has to be soft. If it's not soft when you use this, you're going to hate this tool. It's going to be a big pain in the butt, because squeezing out fondant in this thing when it's hard, it just doesn't work. So make sure your fondant's soft. Pop it in the microwave if you have to, and then I'm pressing down on that top button and squeezing the handle with my hand and remove the excess icing off of the cake board with a wet paper towel. Now I want to get some piping gel on a paintbrush and get some piping gel around the entire perimeter of the bottom of the cake. And then I'm putting this black fondant line and wrapping it around the entire cake, just getting a little outline down. And then where it meets, cut it and press it down, and then I'm using my tools to get it into the correct position. And now I just want to do this for the rest of the cake. So basically with these cartoon cakes, you want to outline all of the edges with this little black fondant line. And I want to get down piping gel wherever I want the line to stick. Starting on one end, pressing the black line down and across the top, and then down the other side. Good, where it meets, cut off the excess. Now, it's a little wavy, so what I want to do is take my tools and my fingers and trying to get this line in the right place where it doesn't look like it's a little wavy. I want it to look as straight as possible. And I'm going to do the same thing for all of the decorations on here. So these little filling lines in the middle, I got a little piping gel underneath and sticking the line down. And then I also got piping gel across the top. And I'm doing it across the top too. So I'm going to do that for both the blue and the purple. And now, same thing, so I want to outline underneath this white little icing drips with the black line. So let's get some piping gel down and then press the line against that part. And you want to make sure that your fondant doesn't dry out too much. This fondant must be pliable. If your fondant is too dry, it's going to start to crack. Trust me, it's happened to me before. It's super annoying. So you don't see me, but I keep squeezing out more fondant lines, but I'm not going to show that every time because I already showed it. So each time I do this, I get some icing or some fondant into that clay gun and squeeze it out, and then I put it on the cake. And now I want to outline these little icing swirls and the cherries, so I got some piping gel around there and just wrapping the black line around and outlining it in the black. Now I want to get a little bit of black across the top of the cherry so it looks a little more cartoonish. So I got some piping gel down, and then I'm laying that black line across the top and down the other side. And I'm doing that for all 4 of the cherries. And let's put that back in the fridge. Now I'm making the candle. I have this ribbon cutter, some white fondant rolled out pretty thick, making the marks, and then just using my pizza cutter to cut this out into like a long rectangle. And I have this strip cutter and thin pink fondant so I can make the little stripes, and I have thicker yellow fondant and a leaf cutter to make the flame for the candle. Get a toothpick underneath, and I'm just creating a hole, get some piping gel down, and then I could stick the toothpick into the candle. Now I want to outline this, so I'm getting some piping gel down, and I'm cutting these little strips to the correct size, get a little bit of water behind it to stick it to the candle, and now I want to outline this entire thing with this black fondant, and it's going to look a little weird and wavy at first, and once I have it in the correct place, then I'm going to use my fingers and tools to get it looking a little more straight, if you will. And that looks good. Let's set that aside. Now I have this purple dot, and I'm going to stick that around the top and then outline that with the black fondant. And get a skewer underneath that candle, stick the candle down the top of the cake. And now I want to make the jimmies. I'm calling them jimmies because I'm from Philly. If you're not from Philly, you're going to call them sprinkles, and that's fine. So I cut these strips into little pieces and then cut each of those pieces into 4 really long, skinny rectangles. And let's put these on the cake. So I'm getting some water behind it, and I'm sticking these on the top of the cake, of the slice and of the cake, in just like a haphazard fashion, different colors, different angles, right? And it looks like jimmies. Beautiful. Now I want to make the top of the cherries. So I'm rolling these out with a little point on one end, set that aside. And now I'm making an edible image banner. I have a video going into complete detail how I do this, and I'm going to link that below. So I use that one cutting tool. I will link that in the description. Got some piping gel behind it. Put it down, cut an even border, and then do the same thing with the black background. Get my cake out of the fridge. Wherever it's going to touch the cake, I'm going to get a little bit of piping gel behind it so it can sit securely to the cake. And now I'm going to cut the bottom part off of the cherry tip and then stick that down, and do that for all 4 of the cherries. Now I have an icing bag with a tip number 2, and I'm going to make these little circle shapes on here. And I had to remove that little edible image sign so I can access that bottom part of the cake. And then I'll just put it back on. Now I have some terracotta petal dust, and I'm getting the orange part of the flame down there, and just using some chocolate petal dust to color in the rest of the cake. And there is the cake. Adorable. So there you go. I just love this cartoon cake trend, and it all stemmed from that one TikTok video that I'm sure everybody saw that so many people sent to me. So Chelsea originally just ordered the slice of cake in those colors. She wanted the teal, blue, purple, and pink. But since this is the end of the year and there's crickets going on right now with me. I have like no cake orders. So I never made a cake that had the slice of cake cut out and put on top. And I wanted to try that out, and I really liked how it turned out. So if you order a cake from me when I'm really slow, that usually happens where I like to make it bigger and nicer and try new things because I have plenty of time on my hands. But I did notice when I was editing the video, I stinking forgot to outline the white drippy part on the cake slice on the top with the black. Like, really? So I guess my tip to you is when you are making these cartoon cakes, take a once over. Take a little glance and make sure that you didn't forget to outline any of the areas with the black. Now this cake is an 8-inch round cake. It feeds about 20 to 25 people. When she originally ordered it, she just wanted the cake slice to feed like 12 to 15. So I charged $2.60 for the cake. However, I did not know that I was going to make it this big. So a design like this to feed 20 to 25 people would be about $360 or so. So I think that's it. What new techniques did you learn in this video? I would love to know. Leave them in the comments below. And you can keep in touch on socials and check out my website. Everything is listed in the description. And if you want to stick around, you can watch this video next and hit subscribe and the bell if you haven't already. Please like this video if you liked it. Thank you so much for watching. I love you guys, and remember, it's cake. Have fun. I will see you on the next one. Bye.